You need to step back and lower your voice, or I will have you removed from this terminal," the flight attendant sneered, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet venom that echoed through the first-class cabin. She wasn't looking at a rowdy drunk or a security threat. She was pointing her finger at Alana Vance, a woman sitting quietly in seat 1A, holding a valid boarding pass. The attendant, Jessica, saw only a black woman in a hoodie and assumed she didn't belong. She assumed she had the power. She was wrong. Jessica didn't know that the woman she was about to drag off the plane didn't just buy a ticket. She had just bought the entire airline. And in 5 minutes, Jessica's life was going to change forever. The fluorescent lights of JFK's Terminal 4 buzzed with the frenetic energy of a Monday morning. It was the kind of chaos that usually gave Alana Vance a migraine. But today, she was too exhausted to care. Alana adjusted the oversized hood of her vintage Stanford sweatshirt, pulling it lower over her eyes. She wasn't trying to hide exactly, but anonymity was a luxury she rarely could afford these days. At 42, Alana was the founder and CEO of Vance Capital, a private equity firm that had quietly become one of the most powerful financial engines on Wall Street. She moved billions of dollars with the stroke of a pen. She had the ear of senators and the fear of competitors. But today, she didn't look like a titan of industry. She looked like a tired woman in leggings and running shoes who had just come off a 20-hour negotiation session in Tokyo and was desperately trying to get home to London for her daughter's graduation. She walked toward the gate for Stratford Airways Flight 902 to Heathrow. She had booked the ticket 3 hours ago, a last-minute first-class seat that had cost her nearly $14,000. She didn't care about the price. She just needed the lie-flat bed and a glass of champagne. As she approached the exclusivity of the first-class check-in counter, the air shifted. The agent behind the desk, a man named Brad with a perfectly gelled comb-over and a name tag that read Customer Service Lead, was laughing jovially with a tall, silver-haired man in a bespoke suit. "Absolutely, Mr. Sterling," Brad chuckled, handing back a passport. "We've blocked off the seat next to you as requested, courtesy of the airline." "Appreciate it, Brad," the man said, sliding his sunglasses on indoors. "Don't want any riffraff bothering me on this flight. I have a merger to sleep on." Alana stepped up as Mr. Sterling walked away. She placed her passport and digital boarding pass on the high counter. Brad's smile vanished instantly. It was like a shutter slamming down over a window. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her hoodie, then down at her sneakers, and finally, with a sigh of exaggerated patience, at her eyes. "Economy check-in is down the hall to the left," Brad said, his hand already waving her away without touching her documents. "Zone 4 and 5 haven't started boarding." Alana didn't blink. She was used to this, the assumption of insufficiency, the "you are in the wrong place" look. "I'm not in economy, Brad," Alana said, her voice calm, smooth, and carrying the distinct, clipped accent of someone educated at the world's finest institutions. "I'm in first. Seat 1A. Brad paused, his eyebrows knitting together in mock confusion. He finally picked up her passport, holding it by the corner as if it were contaminated. He glanced at the screen, typed something lazily, and then let out a short, derisive snort. "There must be a system error," he muttered. He looked up, his voice dropping to a patronizing tone usually reserved for toddlers. "Ma'am, seat 1A is a full-fare first-class suite. It's usually reserved for our premier global partners." "I bought the ticket this morning," Alana said, her patience fraying by the millimeter. "Is there a problem with my boarding pass?" "The problem," Brad said, leaning forward, "is that I have a flag here on the system. possible credit card fraud. It happens a lot with last-minute bookings on high-value cards. Alana stared at him. It was a black card, the Centurion. It wasn't just high value, it was invite only. "Run it again," she said, her voice turning into steel. Brad rolled his eyes, clearly performing for the other gate agents. "Look, I can't hold up the line. I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify—" "Brad!" The voice came from the jet bridge door. A flight attendant emerged. She was tall, blonde, and wearing the Stratford Airways signature crimson uniform. Everything about her was sharp. Her eyeliner, her heels, her elbows. This was Jessica Thorne, the senior purser. She had a reputation among the junior crew as a tyrant, and among the elite passengers as a sycophant who would do anything for a tip. "We are ready to board first," Jessica snapped. "Why is the lane blocked?" "Just sorting out a ticketing discrepancy," Brad said, gesturing vaguely at Alana. "Suspected payment fraud. I was just telling her to wait aside." Jessica's eyes swept over Alana. She didn't see the limited edition watch on Alana's wrist, worth more than Jessica's annual salary. She saw the skin color and the hoodie. "We don't have time for this," Jessica said, checking her watch. "Mom, if you can't pay for the upgrade, you need to go to the service desk in the main hall. You are blocking our priority passengers." Alana took a deep breath. She could have made a phone call right then. She could have called the CEO of Stratford Airways, a man she had met at a gala 2 weeks ago. But she was tired. She just wanted to sit down. "There is no fraud," Alana said, stepping closer. "Scan the pass." Jessica snatched the phone from Alana's hand. She marched over to the scanner and slammed it down. Beep, beep, green. The machine chirped a happy validation sound. The screen flashed. "Vance, A, seat 1A, Premier status." Jessica stared at the screen. For a second, disappointment flashed across her face. She wanted it to be red. She wanted the confrontation. She shoved the phone back at Alana. "Fine," Jessica said, her lip curling. "But I'm warning you. We have a strict dress code in first class regarding decorum. If you disturb the other passengers, you will be moved to the back. Do you understand?" Alana didn't answer. She simply took her phone, walked past Jessica, and stepped onto the jet bridge. The war had started, but Jessica didn't know she was fighting a nuclear power with a slingshot. The cabin of the Boeing 777 was a sanctuary of cream leather and soft ambient lighting. First class on Stratford Airways was designed to make the wealthy forget they were hurtling through the air in a metal tube. There were only 8 suites, each with a sliding door for privacy. Alana found 1A. It was the prime spot. Front left. Quiet. She tossed her carry-on into the overhead bin. As she sat down, exhaling a long breath, she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to loosen. She pulled out her laptop. She had a few emails to send regarding the Aero Holding acquisition deal that was closing in 48 hours. "Excuse me?" The voice was deep and entitled. Alana looked up. It was Mr. Sterling, the man from the check-in counter. He was standing in the aisle, looking at her seat number, then at his ticket, then at Jessica, who was hovering nearby with a bottle of champagne. "Jessica," Sterling said, not even acknowledging Alana's existence. "I thought you said 1A was open. I prefer the bulkhead. More legroom." Jessica froze. She had clearly promised Sterling the seat, assuming she could bump whoever was in it, or assuming the fraud check would keep Alana off the plane. Jessica walked over, her smile tight. "Mr. Sterling, I apologize. The system, it released the seat unexpectedly." Sterling frowned. "Well, fix it. This is ridiculous. I fly this route every week. I'm a diamond partner." He glanced at Alana with open disdain. "And frankly, I don't want to sit across from someone who looks like they're going to a gym session. It ruins the ambiance." Alana stopped typing. She slowly closed her laptop. Jessica turned to Alana. She crouched down, not in a friendly way, but in a way that invaded Alana's personal space. "Mum," Jessica whispered, her voice fake polite, but loud enough for the cabin to hear. "We have a situation. Mr. Sterling is one of our most frequent flyers. His comfort is a priority. I have a lovely seat for you in row 4. It's still business class. Very comfortable." "I paid for first," Alana said calmly. "I paid for 1A. I am staying in 1A. "Technically," Jessica said, her tone hardening, "the captain has the final say on seating arrangements for the safety and comfort of all passengers. If your presence is causing tension, we have the right to relocate you." "My presence?" Alana asked, raising an eyebrow. "I am sitting here quietly. The only tension is coming from the man standing in the aisle, complaining like a child." The cabin went silent. A woman in seat 2F gasped. Sterling's face turned a shade of crimson that matched the carpet. "How dare you?" Sterling sputtered. "Do you know who I am?" "I don't care who you are," Alana replied. "And I don't care who she is. I have a contract with this airline, represented by this ticket. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She opened her laptop again. Jessica stood up. Her authority had been challenged. In her 15 years of flying, she had never been spoken to like that by someone wearing a hoodie. She looked at Sterling, who was fuming. "I'll handle this," Jessica said to him. "Take seat 1K for a moment, Mr. Sterling. I'll get the captain." Jessica stormed toward the cockpit. Alana watched her go. She knew what was coming. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second phone, a satellite phone she used for secure, high-level corporate communications. She sent a single text message to her chief legal officer, David. Message: "Run the personnel file on a Jessica Thorne, Stratford Airways, and find out who is captaining Flight 902 out of JFK. I need the purchase agreement for Aero Holding expedited. Do we have controlling interest yet?" David's reply came 10 seconds later. Reply: "We closed the voting stock transfer an hour ago. You officially own 51% of the parent company as of 9:00 a.m. EST. Why? Is everything okay?" Alana smiled. A small, dangerous smile. Reply: "No, but it's about to be very interesting. Stand by." 5 minutes later, the cockpit door opened. Captain Mark Reynolds stepped out. He was a heavy-set man with 4 gold stripes on his shoulder and a look of perpetual annoyance. He had been flying for 30 years and missed the good old days when pilots were gods and passengers did what they were told. Jessica was whispering furiously in his ear, gesturing toward Alana. Mark nodded, adjusting his cap, and marched over to seat 1A. He didn't crouch. He loomed. "Ma'am," the captain boomed, "I'm Captain Reynolds. My purser tells me you're being uncooperative and causing a disturbance." Alana looked up. "Your purser is lying." "I heard you insulted Mr. Sterling," Reynolds said, crossing his arms, "and you're refusing a direct instruction from the crew to change seats. That's a federal offense, ma'am, interfering with flight crew duties." "Asking me to downgrade my seat because a white man wants it is not a crew duty," Alana said clearly. "It's discrimination." "Watch your mouth," Reynolds snapped. "We don't play the race card on my plane. This is about order. You are disrupting the pre-flight process. Now, I am giving you one chance. Gather your things and move to seat 24B in economy. We've given your business class seat away already due to your non-compliance, or you get off the plane entirely." The audacity took Alana's breath away. They weren't just moving her, they were punishing her. From first to economy. "You're demoting me to economy?" Alana asked, her voice rising slightly. "I paid $14,000 for this seat. And I'm refunding you nothing if you get kicked off," Reynolds said. I have the authority to remove anyone I deem a risk to the flight's cohesion. Right now, you're a risk." Jessica stood behind the captain, smirking. She crossed her arms, holding Alana's gaze with a look of pure triumph. "You lose," her eyes said. "You don't belong here." Alana looked around the cabin. Mr. Sterling was sipping champagne, watching with amusement. But a young couple in row 2 looked horrified. The young man had his phone out, recording. "You're recording this?" Alana asked the young man. "Yes, ma'am," he said nervously. "I got the whole thing." "Good," Alana said. She turned back to the captain. "Captain Reynolds, I want you to think very carefully about your next move. I am not moving. If you touch me, or if you force me off this plane, you will regret it for the rest of your career." Reynolds laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. "Is that a threat? Did you just threaten the captain of a commercial airliner?" "It's a promise of litigation," Alana corrected. "That's it," Reynolds said. He grabbed his radio. "Tower, this is Flight 902. I need airport police and the air marshal at the gate immediately. We have a belligerent passenger refusing to deplane. Possible threat level 2. The cabin went deadly silent. The term threat level 2 implied violence. Reynolds was escalating this to a criminal matter. Jessica leaned in, her voice a whisper only Alana could hear. "You should have just moved to the back, honey. Now you're going to jail." Alana sat back in her seat. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She unlocked her phone and dialed a number. She put it on speaker, but kept the volume low. "Vance," a voice answered. It was distinct, powerful. It was the chairman of the board of the Airline Alliance. "Henry," Alana said calmly. "It's Alana." "Alana, we were just popping the champagne for the acquisition. Where are you? We expected you in London for the signing dinner." "I'm currently on the tarmac at JFK," Alana said, staring dead into Jessica's eyes. "On one of your planes, Stratford Flight 902, but apparently I'm being arrested." "Arrested?" Henry's voice dropped an octave. "What on earth for?" "For sitting in seat 1A while black," Alana said. "Captain Mark Reynolds and Purser Jessica Thorne are currently calling the police to have me removed, so a friend of theirs can have my seat." There was a silence on the line. A terrifying silence. "Put the captain on the phone," Henry roared. Alana held the phone up to Reynolds. "It's for you." Reynolds sneered. "I'm not talking to your boyfriend." He slapped the phone out of her hand. It clattered onto the floor, sliding under the seat. The cabin gasped. Reynolds had just physically assaulted a passenger's property. "You are done," Reynolds growled. "Jessica, get the zip ties. We're restraining her until the cops get here." Alana looked at the phone on the floor. The line was still open. Henry had heard everything. And now the police were coming down the jet bridge. The thud of heavy boots on the jet bridge floor announced their arrival. 2 uniformed Port Authority police officers, 1 male, Officer Miller, and 1 female, Officer Chang, stepped into the cabin. Their faces were grim, reflecting the seriousness of a belligerent passenger call. Following closely behind them was a burly air marshal, his presence a stark reminder of the security protocols on flights. Captain Reynolds immediately launched into his version of events, his voice theatrical. "Officers, I'm Captain Reynolds. This passenger, Ms. Vance, here in 1A, has been refusing to comply with crew instructions, verbally abusing staff, and has even threatened the aircraft's operation. She physically assaulted my purser's property and refused to deplane when instructed. We need her removed immediately." Jessica Thorne stepped forward, her face a mask of false distress. "She's been absolutely dreadful, officers, insulting Mr. Sterling, making a scene, and just completely uncooperative." She gestured to the phone Alana was trying to retrieve. She even refused to give me her phone when I asked her to put it away. Officer Miller, the larger of the two, approached Alana. "Ma'am, we need you to step off the aircraft with us. We'll discuss this further at the terminal." Alana slowly retrieved her phone from under the seat. The call with Henry was still connected, but muted. She stood up, her movements deliberate and calm, a stark contrast to the frantic energy around her. "Officers," Alana said, her voice clear and steady, "I have not violated any federal regulations. I paid for this seat. I was told to move because a fellow passenger, Mr. Sterling, decided he wanted my seat and expressed racist sentiments about my presence." Mr. Sterling, who had been enjoying the unfolding drama, scoffed loudly from 1K. "Racist? Please, I just said I didn't want someone dressed like she's going to the gym next to me. It's about decorum, not race." Alana turned to the young man in row 2. "Sir, did you record the conversation with the captain and the purser?" The young man, whose name was Noah, nodded nervously. "Yes, ma'am. From when the captain came out. I got the whole thing, including him saying he was going to send you to economy for non-compliance." Officer Chang raised an eyebrow. "Is that true, Captain?" Reynolds bristled. "She was disruptive. She was interfering with the pre-flight safety brief." "There hasn't been a safety brief yet, Captain," Noah interjected, holding up his phone. "We're still boarding." Jessica shot Noah a venomous look. "Mind your own business, young man." "He's a witness, Jessica," Alana said, her gaze unwavering. "And so is the chairman of the board of the Airline Alliance, who is still on the phone." She held up her phone, then finally ended the call. "He just heard the captain accuse me of assaulting your property after he slapped my phone out of my hand." Captain Reynolds's face drained of color. The other passengers exchanged shocked glances. Slapping a passenger's phone was a serious transgression. Officer Miller looked from Alana to Reynolds, then to Jessica. "Captain, did you make physical contact with this passenger's phone?" Reynolds stammered. "She wouldn't give it to me. She was refusing orders." He knocked it out of her hand when she tried to give it to someone who was asking to speak to him. Noah clarified, his voice gaining confidence. "It was quite aggressive." Officer Chang, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we still need you to come with us. This needs to be sorted out at the station." Alana nodded. "Very well, but I'm going under protest, and I expect a full investigation into Captain Reynolds's and Purser Thorne's conduct, as well as Mr. Sterling's discriminatory remarks." "This is ridiculous," Jessica spat. "She's just trying to cause trouble. She needs to be charged with interfering with an aircraft." "That will be determined by the evidence, Purser," Officer Chang said, her tone firm. She then turned to Noah. "Sir, we may need you to come down to the station to provide a statement and a copy of that video." Noah's eyes widened, but he nodded. "Yes, officer." As Alana calmly gathered her few items, Officer Miller tried to place a hand on her arm. Alana gently but firmly pulled away. "Do not touch me, officer. I am cooperating fully, but I am not under arrest for any crime." The officers escorted Alana off the plane, followed by Noah, who clutched his phone like a lifeline. As they walked down the jet bridge, Alana looked back into the cabin. Jessica and Captain Reynolds looked momentarily shaken, but still wore expressions of defiance. They believed they had won. They had no idea the earthquake that was about to hit. The police station at JFK was a grim, utilitarian space. Alana was led to a small, windowless interview room. She sat patiently, refusing to give a statement without her lawyer present. Noah, meanwhile, was in another room, eagerly showing his video footage to a different officer. Just as Officer Miller was about to begin questioning Alana, his radio crackled. "Miller, Chang, Report to the lieutenant's office. Immediately. This is a priority." A few minutes later, Lieutenant Davies, a stern woman with decades on the force, entered Alana's room. Her usual no-nonsense demeanor was replaced by a look of bewildered shock. She held a tablet in her hand, its screen glowing with a press release. "Miss Vance," Lieutenant Davies said, her voice remarkably softer than before. "There's been a development." Alana simply nodded, her expression unreadable. "We just received an emergency call from Henry Lexington," Davies continued, referring to the chairman of the board of Stratford Airways' parent company. "He informed us that you are, in fact, the majority shareholder of Aero Holding, which, as of this morning, has completed its acquisition of Stratford Airways." Alana allowed herself a small, knowing smile. "That is correct, Lieutenant." Davies stared at her. You own the airline." "Effectively, yes," Alana confirmed. "My firm, Vance Capital, now controls the majority stake." The lieutenant let out a slow breath. This wasn't just a belligerent passenger anymore. This was an international incident. "Mr. Lexington also informed us that he heard Captain Reynolds physically knock your phone out of your hand while he was on the line, and that he plans to take swift and decisive action regarding the crew's conduct." Before Alana could respond, the door burst open. Officer Chang rushed in, holding her own phone. "Lieutenant, the news channels are already running with it. Stratford Airways just issued an emergency press release confirming the acquisition and announcing an immediate, full investigation into Flight 902. They've grounded the entire crew." "Grounding the crew means they are pulled from duty pending investigation," Alana clarified, her tone cool. "Not fired." Davies looked at Alana, then back at the press release. "Ms. Vance, what exactly do you want to happen here?" Alana looked directly at the lieutenant. "I want to file a formal complaint of discrimination, harassment, and assault against Captain Mark Reynolds and Purser Jessica Thorne. I also want a full internal investigation into the corporate culture at Stratford Airways that allowed this behavior to occur, particularly Mr. Sterling's casual racism and the crew's immediate assumptions." The lieutenant nodded, her face grim. "Understood. We will cooperate fully with the airline's investigation and pursue appropriate charges if warranted." Just then, Alana's other phone, her business line, began ringing. It was David, her chief legal officer. "Alana, thank God!" David's voice boomed. "Henry Lexington is practically having a stroke. He's already convened an emergency board meeting. He wants to know if you want the public statement to include the immediate termination of the flight crew, or if you prefer a more drawn-out HR process." Alana paused. She pictured Jessica's sneer, Captain Reynolds' condescending laugh, Mr. Sterling's entitled smirk, and her own exhaustion after a grueling week of work, only to be judged and demeaned. "David," Alana said, her voice firm and clear, "I want an immediate termination, effective now. No drawn-out process, no severance. I want them escorted off the plane by security and their badges revoked. And I want Mr. Sterling's Diamond Partner status permanently revoked. Blacklist him from all Alliance Airlines." Lieutenant Davies, listening intently, winced. This was going to be brutal. David on the other end of the line sounded like he was suppressing a cheer. "Consider it done, Alana. Henry is already drafting the official termination letters. They'll be delivered on the plane." Alana stood up. "Lieutenant, I believe my statement is now complete. I'd like to arrange for a private jet to London, please. And I would like to formally thank Officer Chang for her objective observation and young Mr. Noah for his courage." The police officers, now understanding the true gravity of the situation, looked at Alana with a newfound respect, tinged with a little fear. This was not a woman to be trifled with. Back on Flight 902, the atmosphere was a bizarre mix of smugness and unease. Captain Reynolds had made an announcement. "Apologies for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. We had a minor security incident, which has now been resolved. We will be departing shortly." He omitted that the security incident was the woman who had just bought the airline. Jessica Thorne was back in the galley, chatting with the other flight attendants, basking in the glow of her perceived victory. "Honestly, some people just think they can get away with anything," she whispered to a junior attendant, Maria, trying to play the victim. "I put her in her place." Mr. Sterling was back in 1A, sipping his champagne, a triumphant smirk on his face. He felt validated. He had won. Suddenly, the jet bridge door opened again. But this time, it wasn't just the police. It was a flurry of figures. 2 high-ranking security officials from Stratford Airways, a grim-faced HR representative carrying a stack of envelopes, and a man in a crisp suit who introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, the personal assistant to Henry Lexington. The 2 Port Authority officers, Miller and Chong, were also present, their faces now entirely devoid of their earlier certainty. The cabin went silent. This was not normal. Mr. Harrison, holding a tablet, addressed the entire first-class cabin, his voice resonating with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Stratford Airways, I deeply regret to announce a significant and immediate change to our flight crew and management. As you may be aware, Stratford Airways has undergone an ownership transition as of this morning. We now fall under the leadership of Vance Capital." A collective murmur went through the cabin. Sterling choked on his champagne. Harrison continued, his eyes sweeping over the crew and landing directly on Jessica Thorne and Captain Reynolds. "It has come to our attention that a severe breach of protocol, gross misconduct, and discriminatory behavior occurred during the pre-boarding process of this flight, involving several members of our crew." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Jessica's face began to pale. Reynolds, who had been listening from the cockpit door, slowly stepped back inside. "Effective immediately," Harrison announced, his voice like a gavel striking down. "Captain Mark Reynolds and Purser Jessica Thorne are terminated from Stratford Airways. Their employment is ceased, without severance, for egregious violations of our company's code of conduct, and for the unlawful harassment of a passenger who, ironically, is the new majority owner of this airline." The cabin erupted. Gasps, whispers, and a few dropped cell phones echoed through the plane. Jessica Thorne looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, for someone to contradict this impossible nightmare. Harrison then turned to the security officers. "Please escort Miss Thorne and Captain Reynolds off the aircraft. Their badges and company property are to be confiscated immediately." The 2 security guards, imposing figures in black, stepped toward Jessica. Her face crumpled. "This is insane! You can't do this! I've been with this airline for 15 years!" "Your 15 years of service have just been erased by 5 minutes of prejudice, Miss Thorne," Harrison said coldly. "And Mr. Sterling," he added, turning to the now horrified man in 1A, "your diamond partner status and all associated privileges are hereby revoked. You will be blacklisted from all flights within the airline alliance, effective immediately, for your discriminatory remarks and complicity in the harassment of our majority shareholder." Sterling looked like he was about to faint. You can't!" "We can, and we just did," Harrison stated, a hint of steel in his voice. "We have multiple witness statements and video evidence. Our new owner takes this very seriously." Jessica was led away by the security guards, tears streaming down her face, muttering incoherently about lawyers. Captain Reynolds, who had tried to hide in the cockpit, was unceremoniously pulled out, and similarly escorted off the plane, his face pale with shock and fury. The HR representative then stepped forward and announced the new, temporary flight crew for Flight 902, explaining that the flight would now be delayed for a full crew change and pre-flight checks. As the new crew settled in, a new face appeared at the door of 1A. It was Alana Vance. She was flanked by Lieutenant Davies and Officer Chang, who now stood in respectful attendance. Alana looked directly at the stunned passengers. "Good morning, everyone," Alana said, her voice calm and strong. "I apologize for the delay. My name is Alana Vance. As you now know, I am the new majority owner of Stratford Airways. What you witnessed today is unacceptable. My company values diversity, respect, and professionalism. Any employee who fails to uphold those standards will face immediate consequences. This airline will be run with integrity, and every passenger, regardless of appearance, will be treated with the dignity they deserve." She then turned to Noah, the young man who had filmed the incident. "Mr. Noah, please come with me. I believe you've earned an upgrade." She smiled faintly. "To first class. And your video will be instrumental in demonstrating the systemic issues we are committed to addressing." Noah, beaming, quickly gathered his things. Alana then went to her rightful seat, 1A, and calmly began to set up her laptop, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. The immediate aftermath for Captain Mark Reynolds and Jessica Thorne was not a quiet exit. It was a public dismantling. As they were escorted off the jet bridge of Flight 902, they weren't led to a private lounge. Security protocols for terminated employees posing a security risk, a designation Alana's security team had insisted upon, dictated they be escorted through the public terminal to the curbside. Jessica, stripped of her company scarf and ID badge at the gate, walked with her head down. But she couldn't hide. The terminal was packed. Passengers from other flights, having seen the commotion on Twitter where Noah's video was already trending under Stratford racist, recognized the uniform. Phones went up. Flashes popped. "That's her!" someone shouted near the duty-free shop. "That's the flight attendant who tried to kick the owner off the plane." Jessica flinched. A group of teenagers pointed and laughed. For a woman who had spent 15 years curating an image of elite perfection, this was a living nightmare. She wasn't just fired, she was viral fodder. Captain Reynolds walked stiffly, his face a mask of furious denial. He kept muttering to the security guard, a man he had ignored for years. "You can't do this. I'm a senior captain. I demand to speak to the chief pilot. This is a misunderstanding." The guard, a burly man named Officer Davis, didn't even look at him. "My orders come from the chairman's office, Mr. Reynolds. You're to be removed from the premises. If you return, you will be arrested for trespassing." They were dumped on the curb of JFK's departures level, standing next to the exhaust fumes of buses and taxis. No corporate car service waiting, no hotel voucher, just two disgraced former employees standing on the concrete while their luggage, hastily retrieved from the crew hold, was dumped at their feet. By the next morning, the incident on Flight 902 wasn't just airline news, it was global news. Noah's video had amassed 14 million views overnight. The clarity of the audio was damning. The world heard Captain Reynolds' arrogance, Jessica's sickly sweet condescension, and Mr. Sterling's blatant racism. But the internet sleuths did what HR departments often failed to do. They dug deep. On TikTok, a user named Aviation Watchdog released a video exposing Jessica Thorne's history. They had found old Facebook posts where Jessica complained about ghetto passengers on the Atlanta route. They found a deleted Instagram story where she mocked an elderly passenger's accent. The internet compiled a dossier of her prejudice, proving Alana wasn't a one-off victim. She was just the first one powerful enough to fight back. For Mr. Arthur Sterling, the fallout was swifter and more brutal. The internet identified him within an hour. He was the CEO of Sterling Global Logistics, a mid-sized freight forwarding company that relied heavily on contracts with major carriers, including Stratford Airways. At 8:00 a.m. on Tuesday, Sterling walked into his office in Manhattan, expecting to do damage control. Instead, he found his keycard didn't work. He buzzed the intercom. "It's Mr. Sterling, let me in. The system is down." The voice on the other end wasn't his receptionist, Sarah. It was Thomas Clark, the chairman of his own board of directors. "Go home, Arthur." Clark's voice crackled through the speaker, cold and detached. "Thomas, what is this? Let me in. I have to issue a statement about that misunderstood video." "There is no statement to issue," Clark replied. "We invoked the morality clause in your contract at an emergency board meeting last night at 3:00 a.m. You are terminated for cause, effective immediately. Your equity is frozen, pending a review of potential damages to the company's brand." "You can't do that!" Sterling screamed, pounding on the glass doors of the company he had built. "I own this place." "Not anymore," Clark said. "We just lost the Amazon contract, Arthur. They saw the video. They don't do business with racists. You cost us $40 million in 3 hours. Security will bring a box of your personal effects down to the lobby. Do not come back." Sterling slumped against the glass door, sliding down until he hit the pavement. People walking by on Fifth Avenue stepped around him, ignoring the weeping man in the expensive suit. He had treated the world like his servants, and now the world had locked him out. 2 weeks later, the reality of hard karma visited Mark Reynolds in the form of a deposition room. Reynolds sat across from David Ross, Alana Vance's viciously efficient chief legal officer. Reynolds had brought a union lawyer, a tired-looking man named Greg, who knew this was a losing battle. "My client is prepared to accept a quiet resignation in exchange for keeping his pension," Greg started, trying to salvage something. "He has 30 years of service." David Ross didn't even look up from his files. He slowly slid a document across the table. "Mr. Reynolds," David said, his voice smooth as silk. "Do you recognize this incident report from 2018? Reynolds squinted. It was a report about a co-pilot, a young Hispanic woman, who had requested a transfer off Reynolds' rotation. The official reason listed was scheduling conflicts. "That's irrelevant," Reynolds grunted. "Is it?" David pulled out another paper. "Because we found the original draft of her complaint, which you successfully pressured the previous chief pilot to bury. She cited a hostile work environment, racial slurs used in the cockpit, and unsafe flying maneuvers used to intimidate. That is a violation of FAA regulation 91.30, careless or reckless operation." David leaned forward. "We have handed this file, along with 3 others we found in the archived basement boxes, to the FAA. As of this morning, the FAA has opened an investigation into your fitness to hold an airline transport pilot certificate." Reynolds went pale. They can't revoke my license for hearsay." "It's not hearsay when we have the flight data recorder logs that match her description of the maneuvers," David smiled. "But here is the part that affects your wallet, Mark. Stratford Airways is suing you for breach of fiduciary duty. By covering up safety complaints to protect your career, you defrauded the airline." David slid a final letter across the table. It was on heavy, cream-colored stationery. "This is a formal notice. Your pension is frozen pending the outcome of the fraud litigation. And since the gross misconduct clause in your contract was triggered by the assault on Ms. Vance's property, the phone slap, your severance is 0. You are leaving with nothing, Mark. No golden parachute, no retirement medical benefits, Nothing. Reynolds looked at his union rep, begging for help. Greg closed his folder. "I can't defend fraud, Mark," Greg said quietly. "You're on your own." 6 months later, Mark Reynolds, the man who once commanded a Boeing 7F-87, was working as a dispatcher for a trucking company in New Jersey. He lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, his house having been foreclosed on when the legal fees drained his savings. He spent his nights on aviation forums using a fake name, arguing that he was a victim of woke culture. But nobody listened. He was a king without a kingdom, grounded forever. Jessica's karma was slower, more personal, and deeply psychological. After the firing, she couldn't pay rent on her upscale apartment in Queens. She moved in with her mother in a cramped house in Long Island, a humiliation she couldn't bear. She applied to every airline, Delta, United, American, even the budget carriers like Spirit and Frontier. The response was always the same: silence. Or, in one excruciating case, an interview that ended the moment the recruiter looked at her ID. "Thorne," the recruiter at a regional jet charter service said, typing her name into Google. He stopped. He looked at the screen, then at her. He turned the monitor around. The first result was the YouTube thumbnail of her sneering face with the title, "Racist Flight Attendant Gets Owned by Billionaire." "We're done here," the recruiter said, pointing to the door. Desperate, Jessica lowered her standards. She applied for a job as a VIP concierge at a high-end hotel in Manhattan. She thought her experience in first class would be an asset. During the final interview, the hotel manager, a poised, impeccably dressed black woman named Mrs. Adebayo, studied Jessica's resume with the kind of calm scrutiny that made the room feel smaller. "Stratford Airways," she murmured, tapping one manicured finger against the page. "You left rather abruptly last month. Can you tell me why?" "It was a restructuring," Jessica replied, forcing out the lie. Her fingers twitched against the hem of her blazer, her pulse thudding in her ears. Mrs. Adebayo didn't react at first. She simply lifted her eyes, and in that single, measured glance, Jessica understood. The manager already knew. Everyone in hospitality knew. The story had traveled farther than she'd ever imagined. "My daughter is a film student," Mrs. Adebayo said, her voice low but unwavering. "She showed me a video a few days ago. It featured a flight attendant who believed she had the authority to judge a woman's worth based on a hoodie." The air drained from Jessica's lungs as if someone had punched her. Her mouth went dry. I was following protocol," she stammered, reaching instinctively for the excuse she used to cling to like a life raft. "No," Mrs. Adebayo replied, closing the file with a quiet finality that felt like a door slamming shut. "You were following your bias, and this hotel does not tolerate that. We serve everyone, kings, queens, and people in hoodies. You don't have the temperament for service, Ms. Thorne. What you have is the temperament of a bully." She gestured toward the exit. "You may leave." Jessica didn't find another glamorous job. Instead, she wound up working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour diner near the airport. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of burnt coffee clung to everything, and the only break she got was when the rain drowned out the sound of traffic outside. One soggy Tuesday night, a group of Stratford Airways flight attendants walked in, still in their uniforms after a late landing. But these weren't the stiff, outdated outfits Jessica remembered. The new uniforms, sleek, modern, elegant, had been designed under Alana Vance's leadership. The attendants were laughing, chatting excitedly about the profit-sharing bonuses Alana had just rolled out, glowing with pride in a company that finally valued them. Jessica ducked behind the counter, crouching near the grease trap like a cornered animal. She watched them through the small pass-through window, her heart pounding with humiliation. The world she once belonged to had moved on, elevated, improved, transformed, and she was no longer part of it. She wasn't even close. She was serving pancakes to the very people she once lorded over, trapped in a cage built from her own arrogance. Meanwhile, the woman she had tried to diminish, Alana Vance, did not revel in revenge. She didn't chase spectacle. She built. Alana didn't merely remove the toxic employees. She uprooted the culture that had enabled them. She hired a new CEO for Stratford Airways, David Chen, a man with a reputation for progressive innovation. Together, they unveiled what became known as the Vance Protocol. It was not performative. It was structural. Blind booking reviews, passenger names, zip codes, and demographic markers were stripped from all risk assessment algorithms, eliminating fraud flags rooted in xenophobia or racial bias. Open-door cockpit policy. A confidential channel was created for flight attendants to report abusive captains directly to an external ethics board, bypassing the long-protected hierarchy of pilot unions. Service training overhaul. Stratford scrapped the old first-class exclusivity training and replaced it with a philosophy centered on genuine hospitality and human dignity. A year after the infamous incident, Alana hosted a gala in the massive hangar where Flight 902 had once sat. The event was titled The Future of Flight. The guest of honor wasn't a politician, a celebrity, or a donor. It was Noah, the young man with the phone who had recorded everything. He sat in the front row, timid but proud. Alana took the stage wearing a breathtaking gown, though she held the microphone with the same steady assurance she'd held her boarding pass that day. "A year ago," she began, her voice resonating through the vast space. "I was told I didn't belong in seat 1A. I was told I was a disruption. I was told to move to the back of the plane." Silence settled, thick and expectant. "But thanks to the courage of a witness," she nodded toward Noah, who blushed and waved awkwardly, "and the unflinching honesty of a camera lens, we transformed a moment of humiliation into a catalyst for change. Today, Stratford Airways stands as the most profitable airline in the Alliance, not because we raised prices, but because we raised our standards." Her tone sharpened just slightly, acknowledging the consequences faced by Reynolds, Thorne, and Sterling. "We removed the rot, and in doing so, we demonstrated a simple truth. You cannot build a legacy by demeaning those you believe are beneath you, because someday the person you're judging may be the one who determines your fate." The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was seismic. Pilots, engineers, and attendants stood, cheering for the woman who had changed their entire industry. Later, as the gala ended, Alana walked toward her car. Her driver opened the door. "Home, Miss Vance." "Actually," Alana said, glancing at her watch. "Take me to JFK. I'm catching a flight to Tokyo." "First class?" he asked. Alana smiled. She reached into her bag and pulled out a familiar object, the vintage Stanford hoodie she had worn on the day everything changed. "Yes," she said, slipping it on and pulling the hood over her head. "But let's see if the check-in agent recognizes me this time." This wasn't about revenge. It was a quiet test. 30 minutes later, she approached the check-in counter. The young agent behind the desk looked up and saw a black woman in a hoodie. No jewelry, no status cues, no indication that she was one of the most influential executives in the aviation industry. He didn't glare. He didn't scrutinize. He didn't question her legitimacy. He simply smiled. "Good evening, Mum. Traveling to Tokyo. Let me get you taken care of. Your seat in 1A is already prepared." Alana accepted the boarding pass, her throat tightening. She glanced at his name tag. Trainee. "Thank you," she said softly. "You have no idea how much that means." And as she walked toward security, not as a warrior, but simply as a traveler, the circle closed. Karma had done its work. The cruel had fallen, the just had risen, and the skies, at long last, belonged to everyone. The story of Alana Vance isn't just about a powerful CEO. It's a stark reminder that prejudice can lurk in the most unexpected places, and that true power isn't about privilege, but about integrity and justice. Jessica Thorne and Captain Reynolds learned a brutal lesson about judging a book by its cover, and Mr. Sterling discovered that wealth doesn't buy decency. Alana's unwavering resolve not only changed her flight, but transformed an entire airline, proving that standing up for yourself can ignite a ripple effect that reshapes an industry. What did you think of Alana's response? Have you ever faced similar discrimination? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of triumph over prejudice resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's make sure stories like Alana's continue to inspire change.